MLS Aces Podcast. This is your host, Tom Sweezy. This is episode 279. And no, he didn't go number one overall in the Super Draft, but he's my number one draft pick, Jason Vivang. Jason,
What's up?
how are you?
I love that. I like that introduction. That's very kind.
I'm trying to get creative. I'm trying to
I'm
get
doing
creative
well.
where I can. But if fans are noticing a difference in Jason,
Trying hard.
he's trying hard with some technology issues going on. But
Yeah, I'm
um,
recording off an iPad. I think this might be the way I have to do it from now on, but we'll see.
you know,
My computer, it won't let me delete anything, and it says it's full, and it's just not working. Won't open anything. So
it's the holiday season. Maybe Santa Claus
give
or
it a break.
someone we'll
For
bring
a
you
couple
a
days.
computer. Awesome. All right, let's dive into it because last episode was all Columbus Crew, all MLS Cup, and just as quickly as we have to turn around away from the Crew and their accomplishments, we have to turn into the off season for 2024 because it's already started. Moves have happened. News has been popping off. And I mean, so Jason, do we want? I know I just said what I said to you off recording about 5 seconds ago. Do we want to talk the annoying news first, or do we want to go into like the managers and stuff first?
Um, I say managers first. Then
Okay.
we can be upset when we're towards the end.
True. Well, we'll ease into it. All right. So the manager carousel has been going on. A lot of managers fired during the 2023 season. I feel like more than we typically see, and a lot of these opportunities and a lot of these clubs are beginning to, get filled and fill their open head coaching vacancies. And we'll start here in chronological order, and we'll go with Charlotte FC. They hired their brand new manager in Dean Smith. You guys may know Dean Smith from his time managing in the Premier League at Aston Villa, Norwich City, and Leicester. He also managed a little bit in the English lower divisions with Brentford, Aston Villa, Norwich, and Walsall. He is most probably notable for his time with Aston Villa, where he helped them get promotion out of the EFL Championship back into the Premier League. But he also was an EFL Cup runner-up with Aston Villa and an EFL Trophy runner-up with Walsall. So just some fun facts for you about Dean Smith over there. He has 217 career wins in his 605 games managed. So not a bad little split there for the Englishman. I was watching the MLS Super Draft today, just to also date this episode, and they had Dean Smith on to kind of interview and talk a little bit about his transition to America and Charlotte and everything like that. I mean, it's very funny seeing like a Premier League manager interview in the scope and in terms of Major League Soccer, but like that's totally how he took it. I mean, I like the move. I think it's going to bring a level of professionalism and a level of I don't know, just a different kind of, I think, culture that we haven't really seen a manager come to Major League Soccer and really try to bring into the locker room, which could be a good thing, could be a bad thing, but I like to think that his resume kind of speaks for itself, and players are going to want to play for that and operate in the way that he best sees fit. I'll stop there with that. What do you think of the Dean Smith hiring?
I think it kind of has to be talked about within the context of Charlotte, right? Like they've had this will be their fourth manager, I believe, third since they've started, which was only a couple of years ago. So like that's not good, but I think like you're saying, this is a pretty aggressive, bigger name hire. He's had success. He's managed at the highest level in Europe, which is just impressive at the very least, right? Regardless of results or what you've done at that level, getting a team promoted to the Premier League is in itself one of the most difficult jobs as a manager. So I think that is very impressive, and it shows that Charlotte is willing to continue to invest, because I think they've invested in their club pretty heavily. I don't know if it's always worked out. I would say it hasn't, but it shows that they're not willing to just brush it aside. They're really going after it. I think this is one of those hires where you can see a club that's like committed and going after it. And I think that's good. I think that's good for them, especially given, what the past couple years for them as a club, which has been sort of up and down. They've had some awesome moments, but, they've also had some weaker moments. But another team with a huge fan base that's still growing, and this is just a signing that if they can get some consistency, it's just going to keep growing their club.
I mean, look, Dean Smith, even like I said in an interview today that I was listening to, he even acknowledged, the 65,000 fans that Charlotte FC will pull to a game, or they pulled to whatever that one inaugural game against the Galaxy. But still, that they pull in a large.
No, but still, they pull in like I
Yeah,
want to say 25 to 30, if not more.
for sure. No, I'm not taking it away.
They're in like the top 10, probably top 5 even.
And it's something that I've given Charlotte a ton of credit for on this podcast before and to your point, they have invested a lot. They've invested a lot in their community. They've invested a lot in the training center, their academies, their MLS Next Pro side. They've invested a lot in spending on DPs. And I would say my biggest critique of them is it just hasn't worked at the first team level on the field yet. I think that they're slowly righting that ship, and I like that they got rid of Miguel Angel Ramirez when it clearly wasn't working out. I almost like that they got rid of Christian Latanzio because they were just like, he's not going to bring us to the next level. I'm getting a little bit of a concern of like FC Cincinnati-ish, where it's almost just like it's not that bad on the field like Cincinnati was for all those years, but I'm just getting the concern of like, where's the stability? And I really hope that Dean Smith, like I said, with his resume and with everything that he's done and the clubs that he's managed, can bring that kind of righting the ship stability for the next 5+ years or so. And I think he can be. Like I said, I think that managing in the Premier League isn't a small feat at all. And he's going to have a lot of players respect that and want to play for him. I was trying to think about this and no one really stuck out to me. So maybe, you can tell me if I'm completely missing someone, Jason, but has there been anyone who's ever managed like at the Premier League or within the Premier League come to Major League Soccer after like that time has really ended? Like, I can't think of someone. I can think of it the opposite way where we've seen.
Yeah, where like they're trying to grow into the Premier League.
MLS managers going and coaching in League One or the Bundesliga or wherever, but like we've never really seen it like top league in world pretty much. Like you have a manager.
Henry start in MLS?
Did Henry ever manage in the Premier League?
No.
That's what I'm saying. Is like there's no one that's ever.
But he went to like a top 5 league after.
Yeah, same thing with Patrick Vieira, right? There's that. What I'm saying is like we've seen it where Major League Soccer has been the Kickstarter for a manager.
You've seen it like with Vieira and Henry, is what you're saying.
Yeah,
we haven't seen the Dean Smith.
Exactly, and that's what I'm getting at. So I don't know. I was like, am I going crazy? Is there someone that has come and
off the top of my head, I can't think.
Right?
Maybe in the future with Pep.
Maybe. Look, I'll take it though, right? Like, not that Dean Smith is Pep Guardiola, not that Dean Smith is Jurgen Klopp or any large name that you're going to talk about in European soccer, coaching in La Liga or the Premier League or whatever. But Dean Smith has I would say a pretty solid resume of coaching in England from multiple levels, especially at the top level. And I'm interested to see how this works out for him. I'm not going to sit here and be like, it's a home run. It could be. It very much could be. And I hope it is for Charlotte and their fans. But I'm just interested to see how this is almost an experiment, I feel.
Yeah, I mean, I think the concern would be, are we going to sit here in a year and be talking about someone else?
Yeah.
And that would be my concern, where I don't obviously that's not the goal. Obviously that's not, what they do going into it. But in the back of your mind, you have to think like this is it, while they're making decisions pretty quickly, and especially on some of these managers, it's like at some point, like you're saying, where it's consistency we haven't really seen on the field. That's partially, I mean, that might be the biggest thing manager-wise, right? Like if you want consistency on the field, you need a consistent manager. They haven't had that. They haven't found it on the field. And like Dean Smith needs to be at minimum 3 years, I think.
And I think if you're
unless it's just horrible, right? Like
yes, right.
obviously,
And
like the small percentage of it being just an absolute disaster. I still think you need to give him more time and be committed to this going forward. To be
yep.
committed to his style, his players that he wants in, what he advises. Like let him do his thing.
You need to give him the time, like you said, his tactics, his roster, his coaching staff, his his transfer windows. And look, this is gonna take time to develop, and it's gonna take time to fully establish. And yes, you can't give him the Latanzio treatment of a season and a half and then let him go if things aren't kind of going the exact way you want. But again, I think with his name, with his reputation, with where he's managed before, this almost seems like he's in it for the long-term project, and that's what I would assume here. Anything else on Dean Smith before we talk about the next manager hire? And
let's move it on. It's a similar discussion, I feel like.
yeah, I was gonna say, and kind of transitioning to almost a similar topic of you have to give this guy time to learn the rules of Major League Soccer, learn the culture, put together his coaching staff, his rosters, his players, everything like that. Slightly different with the larger organization sitting above him, but the New York Red Bulls have hired a new manager in Sandro Schwarz. He has previously managed in the German Bundesliga for Hertha Berlin and Mainz. He's also managed at a relatively high level of the Russian Premier League with Dynamo Moscow. He's also managed in the German lower divisions for Wien Wiesbaden as well as Mainz 2 and FC Eschborn. He did win the German fifth division with FC Eschborn in his first year being a manager. Don't know if that if that's in,
super notable.
yeah, I don't know, but if someone's impressed by it, take it. But he does have 100. Yeah, he has one. He has a trophy. He has 128 career wins in his 341 total games managed across all of those sides. I mean, Jason, I took Dean Smith first, so I'll let you take Schwarz first here.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you look at the records, they're similar, right? Like if you basically double all of the numbers on this, you get Dean Smith.
Yeah, longer term managing. Yeah,
right. But I mean, to me, this is just another situation where it's like, I mean, the Red Bulls, I have a little bit more trust in, obviously, given their track record. I also think that they have an obvious connection to Europe and specifically Germany. And I think that they've probably been watching him for a while or potentially having him as, an option for some time. So I think that's a positive. I mean, that's obviously speculation, but like it's pretty clear to me. But at
he's
the
a
same
known
time,
commodity for sure, I would say.
yeah, and look at his progression too. I think it's always good to look at where they started, how they've improved, and it outside of the record, like it seems very clear that he's improved consistently and actually taken steps up throughout his career, which has actually been relatively short, right? Like 341 games managed is not a super long time, but it's starting in, like you said, that fifth division, winning. Then he's in the fourth division, right? And then he's in the 3 and 2, and now he's in Bundesliga. Like that progression, I think, speaks more to the quality of a manager than just like stats sometimes do, because it means that while he's at 341 games and he's been on what, 5 teams. So
yeah, 5 teams.
like that's a lot of switching, and this will be a 6th team, but that also means that he's somewhat getting results quickly, which is a good sign.
For sure. I think, you like to see, so I looked through his like career journey a little bit. When I put up a piece on MLSAces.com, and his first full season as a manager, he won the fifth division, got the team into the fourth division. Then he was, I think he was there for a year. He was given an opportunity to go manage in the 3 Liga, the German third division. Then he was brought into the Mainz organization where he was given, the reign for Mainz 2 for like a year and a half or something like that. And then Mainz fired their manager, and they had, confidence in him internally to have him take over. And he managed in the Bundesliga for like 3 seasons. Things didn't go well, right? Bad ending. You were not winning, whatever it may be. You get the job at Dinamo Moscow, which isn't a small job. Like there's like
that's arguably one of the biggest teams.
Yeah, it's Zenit, it's St. Petersburg, and it's Moscow, right? Like those are the teams in Russia that if you're going to manage,
they compete in Champions League sometimes. So
exactly, and I think it was he had a pretty good record at Moscow until I think he lost like the Russian Cup final, and then he left the job and then got the job at a very bad Hertha Berlin squad that got relegated. I don't put that blame on him. Some people do, but whatever. So I think what I'm saying is that there's clearly, to your point, that career progression where he's getting only better and better at the end of the day for still a relatively young manager. The thing that concerns me, I think, in comparison to Dean Smith is the longevity of, I think, his time in Major League Soccer. I wouldn't say it's going to be the same. I can see Dean Smith being
I
able
see
to
what you're
rest of
saying.
his career.
Well, it's sort of like what we were saying is Dean Smith is using this less probably as like a jumping forward point.
Yeah, where I think Sandro Schwarz is like trying to prove himself again.
Yeah. It's like sort of succeed here, and maybe now you're in the Red Bull system. Who knows what,
Exactly, right. Is this his gateway back into Salzburg in Austria, or Leipzig in the Bundesliga again? Is this his opportunity? Because Sandro Schwarz is not also unlike the last few hirings for the Red Bulls at manager, he's not coming from within the Red Bull organization. He's coming from an outside organization. His tactics are similar to what the Red Bulls do, and he's different because he has managed in the German Bundesliga and Moscow a little bit, right? So there is it's not almost this guy who hasn't coached at the highest level he has, or one of the highest levels he has. But it's a weird hiring for me. I think it could be really successful. I'm not going to sit here and say it's not. I like the hiring. I just think that Dean Smith has an opportunity to be in Charlotte and MLS for the next decade, while Sandro Schwarz, I can see in 2-3 years, if the Red Bulls, win a few playoff games, win I was about to say an Open Cup, never mind, a Supporters Shield or something, right? Like that he gets that opportunity back. He gets an opportunity in the larger Red Bull system and is going back to coach in Europe. So look, if this is a short-term stopgap and he puts the Red Bulls over the top in a short amount of seasons, then if that's what they're aiming for, then great,
Yeah, I mean, and if he succeeds at the Red Bulls, like the stature of the club will go up even more, and I think they'll be able to find a replacement again in that scenario, right? Like in this idea, he would succeed so well that he'd get that promotion or whatever to it. European League or whatnot. But like where MLS is now, I feel like that would just propel Red Bulls into like that upper tier, where then it's like, who do they want? They can kind of get them.
I completely agree. This doesn't seem like a Gerhard Struber type of hiring, right? Like it feels different than that. Like he's a young up and coming manager, and he's bringing a higher level profile of clubs he's managed. And I don't know, there's something that just feels different about Sandro Schwarz coming to the Red Bulls compared to any other Red Bull manager we've seen hired in, I don't know, the last decade or so. I mean, honestly, like Jesse Marsch wasn't even this guy when Jesse Marsch got hired. Jesse Marsch developed into this. Like Sandro Schwarz is already a Bundesliga manager that's coming back to then be like, okay, Berlin wasn't my problem. Berlin wasn't my fault. I'm going to prove that I can manage, and then maybe try to get back in. So I don't know. There's just something that's like sitting positively with me about this hire, but then there's also something that's sitting a little negatively with me.
Yeah, but your negative is like if they succeed super well, like that's your negative.
Then if so they win,
if your negative is almost already a positive. It's like if they succeed and win MLS Cup or whatever, I think any Red Bull fan would be like, sure. I mean, if he goes, he goes, but like at least he brought a trophy. Like that's
Fair
something
enough.
in itself.
Fair enough. And look, as an NYCFC fan, I understand being part of a larger conglomerate and your talent's going to get poached if it's what happens. So Fair enough. I should be the first person to
Well, the
recognize
same
that.
thing sort of happened to you guys. Like you won MLS Cup and things changed.
Yeah, 100%. Hey, we've lost plenty of manager to some success in the league, you know. So thank you for calling me out on that, Jason. I appreciate that because I should just recognize that. But you're right. New England Revolution, they made their next managerial hire. This one is different, and we can talk about this one in a different way.
This
Caleb
is MLS
Porter.
coaching carousel
This
back at
is
it.
this is after 1 year off of coaching in Major League Soccer. Caleb Porter's back. He's coaching in the New England Revolution organization. If you guys are newer to Major League Soccer and you don't know the name Caleb Porter, then I mean you are missing out on a little bit of history of a pretty good manager at this point. He's managed the Portland Timbers and the Columbus Crew, also managed the US U23s in Akron, in NCAA soccer. He has won 2 MLS Cups, 2015 with Portland, 2020 with Columbus, and 1 Campeones Cup with Columbus as well. He did win MLS Coach of the Year back in 2013. His record in Major League Soccer is pretty outstanding. 137 wins, 94 draws, and 107 losses in 338 games managed. I mean, there's never, at least in my brain, there's never a doubt that Caleb Porter is a really good tactical manager. He just kind of gets into fights with the front office and then he gets fired eventually after he wins an MLS Cup. That's the story of Caleb Porter. And I bet you if you're a New England Revolution fan, you'd probably take that because you'd probably
he's like a 10-year younger Bruce Arena.
I mean, look, he's developing into it, right? I just know, right? Like the Revs, they're desperate. They're hungry for an MLS Cup and they have a really good roster. And I think
that's it though. Like the Revs right now have a great team that we know can succeed. And now they just got a guy who we know can also bring trophies. Like I think this is a good hire for them because it kind of stabilizes a lot of what went a little crazy last year. Not even last year, like a couple of months ago. I think this is one of those hires that's just like, they know they have the on-field talent to succeed in MLS. And with Caleb Porter, I think you look at his career, his MLS career, the guy knows the league, the guy knows how to win in the league. I mean, as recently as 2020, he was an MLS Cup champion. So that's 3 years ago. This would be fourth season literally since. So
yeah. It's like if you just you have to take the good with the bad with Caleb Porter. Caleb Porter will build your club into one of the best in Major League Soccer. He'll win. I mean, so far everywhere he's gone, he's won you an MLS Cup.
Yeah.
And it's just going to be an ugly ending when it happens. When the clock finally hits 0 and the bomb explodes, it's going to happen.
Well, another one where it's like, hey, if he wins MLS Cup, do you care?
Yeah. I mean, look, that's any hire, right? If you win an MLS Cup, if you win trophies, I think for a majority of organizations they take that. I think there's a handful that are like, no, we want long-term stability and success rather than just one MLS Cup. But
that's what separates like the top teams and the teams who just want to win now.
100%. And I wouldn't put Charlotte, Red Bulls, or New England into the category of long-term stability. They're looking for the one, So
they're looking for a huge, like a flash in the pan type season almost.
Exactly. I mean, look, I think Caleb Porter can bring you some like success across 3 seasons. I just don't think it's much more past 3 or 4 years. But look, if you're gonna quote unquote downgrade from Bruce Arena, you're not downgrading that much when you fall upon Caleb Porter. He knows how to win in this league. He knows the rules. He knows the players. He knows scouting. He knows how to build a competitive winning roster. So look, I like Caleb Porter. I'm a fan of him. He brings some great gifts during the MLS season. And
hey, it's good to have him back in the league.
Honestly, yeah, I'm happy to see Caleb back on the sideline. It feels like he should always be a manager of some MLS team, right?
Look, if the Fire had hired him, I would have been ecstatic.
Yeah, that's a great hire for the Chicago Fire, 100%. Anything else on Caleb Porter before we get to another longtime MLS manager?
Let's keep it rolling.
Let's keep it moving. Orlando City, I said this on Twitter that they made their biggest signing of the offseason, and they re-signed manager Oscar Pareja through the 2025 season. He won the Lions their only trophy in club history with the 2022 U.S. Open Cup championship. He also won the U.S. Open Cup and a Supporter Shield back during his days with Dallas. He knows this league. He knows how to win in this league. And in his 149 career games managed for Orlando, he has 70 wins, right? That's not 70 wins, 37 draws, 42 losses. That's a very good winning record over the course of his time with Orlando City. I mean, Jason, how important was it? Or you can tell me if you think differently. How? But in my opinion, it is important. But how important is it for you that Orlando re-signed Oscar ahead of this upcoming season?
I mean, I think it's massive. When you have like a million other fan bases going, "Oh man, it would be awesome if we could get Pareja this offseason," because like there was that uncertainty. Then you know that like this is an incredible signing. Like you're saying, this is arguably their biggest signing of the offseason could be Pareja. And I think we're in a time where we just saw two very good managers go compete in MLS Cup. And I almost feel like the manager, especially after we've just talked about this is our fourth now, the manager is at a point in MLS where they can really affect a lot and impact the game quite a bit. And not like it's different in MLS. Like a manager is affected everywhere, but
yes.
I feel like the importance of it is really on display in MLS, especially recently. And Pareja, like he gets results, man. He knows the way. It's almost like repeating Caleb Porter, but I would say Pareja's even a step above in terms of just quality. Although, I mean, that's tough because
yeah, I'm gonna say,
Cups, but
I don't know. I take Porter over Pareja just in the sheer sense of Pareja, and I love him. I think he's honestly a very good manager, and he should always have a job at MLS as long as he wants to be coaching. I do think in the biggest games, in the biggest moments, he does crumble a little bit. I think he tactically makes mistakes when the lights are shining the brightest. While Caleb Porter, like you said, he's won two of the damn things. He's won a third trophy in his career as well. It's not to say Oscar Pareja doesn't put together really good teams and really good runs and really good moments, but if you look back to last
year, 3 trophies.
Yeah, he does. Hey, a Supporter Shield.
Which MLS doesn't no longer
exactly
understand, or I don't even know what the word I'm looking for, but
you just want to get to the Open Cup talk. We'll talk about it. But look, I think Pareja coming back is big. I would like to continue to see Pareja grow as a manager, because if he can get over that hump and he can get that MLS Cup title and he can kind of I would say wipe away that little bit of bad reputation he has around them in big games, I think he goes down as an all-time great in MLS history. So I like him, and I think he's building something special with Orlando.
Well, I mean, the other thing is we just spent all that time talking about consistent managers and staying, long term. This is a guy who is consistent and staying long term, and that's how you build and build and build into those bigger aspirations, bigger trophies, better players, more money.
Yeah, no, literally, that's literally it. Is how do you build a? Orlando seems to be a club trying to build the long-term success, not just win a trophy, which I appreciate, and I think they're doing a lot of things correct and a lot of things great, and I think that's all stems with Oscar Pareja remaining on the sideline. So we'll give him that credit. And let's move forward. I just want to say MLS Super Draft, it is over. It is done. We didn't do a large Super Draft coverage conversation this year. Sorry about that. It's the one thing that, we talked about when the Super Draft rules changed a few weeks ago or months ago, when they were when you opened up more to more underclassmen pretty much.
Yeah.
I think I heard Travis Clark, which if you don't know who Travis Clark is, he's from Top Draw Soccer. He's literally the number one person to cover college soccer in this country. He's he is the dude. If you're going to listen to any college soccer talk, He said that is a great rule. It opens up more opportunities for players and clubs and everything like that. But he said it makes an impossible job of predicting the MLS Super Draft even more impossible, because now it's just a free for all. Our club's going to try to go super young with freshmen to build out an MLS Next Pro roster. These guys, if they get selected and they're lower classmen, they have the opportunity to say, I want to go back to school next year. So there's so many different things going on with this. But all I'm going to say is that to everyone who was drafted today, congratulations on the potential start of your career. And, take the opportunity and ball out, whether it's an MLS Next Pro, USL Championship, USL League One, whatever it is, take your opportunity and begin your special career. That's all I'll leave the Super Draft talk at with that. Okay, here's the fun
downer.
The downer of the episode, and I'm missing even one whole section of what happened with MLS last week. But two major things news-wise happened with Major League Soccer. I'm going to start with the thing that's not on here, Jason, just letting you know. Last week on the podcast, I remember even saying to you, and Don Garber said pre-MLS Cup that they're going to announce some rules changes for the 2024 season. So
I think we speculated about it last week.
Yeah, what is it going to be? Exactly. And people were speculating online. You even had major pundits working for MLS and Apple TV and all that stuff saying, is it a fourth DP? Is it U22 initiative related? Is it roster spending? Is it what is it? Because it has to be something. Messi's here, all this stuff. Well, pretty much all it is just a bunch of rule changes around timing as far as players getting on and off the field for substitutions, injuries, nothing that's really going to impact.
Nothing crazy, but I feel like they were positive changes. Like, not to beat up on like the fact that they didn't do a lot of what we were hoping for. At least what they did was positive, right? Like, I personally, as someone who goes to a lot of Fire games, don't like how the clock never continues to run. Like, I usually set a timer or like a stopwatch on my phone. Right when the 90th minute hits, and now we're going to get that in stadium. So that's like a welcomed addition. But I see what you're saying. There's a lot more that we just basically got fed breadcrumbs.
All of the rules are great, right? They're going to have a VAR ref explain to the crowd in the stadium what's going on. To your point, they're going to have the clock run at the end of regulation so that, fans can be aware of how much time is going on, and it's all great stuff. I'm not going to sit here and that, but I think Joe Lowry said it perfectly that Major League Soccer missed an opportunity to grow at a very rapid rate with Lionel Messi in your league, that you're not allowing for more. And this is not just Major League Soccer, right? It's Major League Soccer and its owners and everything under that realm. But it's just the fact of, like, you didn't give clubs an opportunity to advance their rosters, their organizations, and the league as a whole to a new level with Lionel Messi, with a Copa America coming to the U.S. next year, with a World Cup coming to America in 2 years' time, right? Or 3 years' time, 2 years, whatever. It's 2 years' time at this point. So it's like, it's just, I am personally just highly annoyed at Major League Soccer for that, and just the sense of, you could have done so much more, and you're like, here's a clock. That's what you gave me. You gave me a stopwatch when I wanted, a fourth DP, an extra U22 spot, some give me something to help. I don't know. I'll stop I'm just very angry at this. So
I think this is a good way to transition into the next part, because I think what we were expecting is like, okay, LAFC just played the most games ever for an MLS team in a calendar year or whatever it was. Maybe increase the salary cap, maybe add roster spots, maybe add some more under fourth DP, like we were kind of expecting. Like, I'm still a little bit surprised at how we didn't see any of those changes.
But, the fourth DP I wasn't too confident in happening. I don't know. I just don't see that I didn't see. But something.
I felt like there were opportunities to make it so teams could be a little bit deeper, a little bit not necessarily larger, but like a lot of these clubs who have MLS Next Pro teams, that's like where they put younger talent, academies or
Yeah.
whatever it is. And those are important. In the more investment that these clubs can put into their players, the better the on-field product. So I think this does combine, like I won't go too far, but I think it transitions well because like now we get this other news and it's like,
Yeah.
what, like
And
maybe you could have helped fix this.
And I'll transition that into the further conversation of the second disappointing thing that Major League Soccer and its owners did in this past week is that obviously, Jason, to your point, you mentioned LAFC playing the record number of games that any MLS club has in a calendar year. And during Don Garber's State of the Union, they said that they were going to address opportunities or figure out ways where clubs can potentially play less games or not have a jam-packed schedule and stuff like that. Well, Major League Soccer plans to be represented in the U.S. Open Cup by their MLS Next Pro sides, completely removing the top division of soccer in this country from the oldest running soccer competition in this country. I added that second part in there because I'm salty about it. But pretty much all of the MLS Next Pro sides are going to be the ones playing in the U.S. Open Cup in 2024. There are plans to revisit this after the 2024 season, apparently. I think, to me, this is a step backwards when even when you have the opportunity now, and look, I know people hate the Messi thing and all you talk about is Messi and blah, blah, like all these, podcasts and people coverage talking about Messi, but it's important because he's the best player of all time in your league currently. You had the opportunity to take so many steps forward or just take a single step forward. Major League Soccer and its owners did. And all they did was give the fans crumbs as far as these updated rules. And then I think completely like smack them in the back of the head when they went to go pick up the crumbs by saying like US Open Cup's not important. And we all know why. We all know it's Leagues Cup. We all know it's the agreement in competition with Liga MX and the money and that it's bringing into Apple TV and all of that. It's 100% comes down to the dollar bill at the end of the day. At least in my brain, it does. And I'm such a fan of the U.S. Open Cup, and I will continue to watch the U.S. Open Cup next year and support it. It just absolutely sucks to see MLS teams removing themselves from the competition for the MLS teams, not MLS Next Pro teams.
I think not all MLS teams have an MLS Next Pro team currently. I think.
DC doesn't. I don't know about San Diego next year. I think that's it.
But regardless, they could have just loosened I don't even know. Are there roster restrictions? Like they have to submit for the U.S. Open Cup? Like they could have loosened that and just done this anyways for MLS teams. If they wanted to play their reserves, they can. No one's ever said you have to play these exact 11 players. Like,
have you watched Sporting Kansas City in the U.S. Open Cup the last 5 years? It's SKC too, bro. That's all they do.
It's just that's the thing. It's like just there's no reason for it to be like this whole massive like, oh, we can't play that because there's too many games. First of all, they like you said, added Leagues Cup, which is clearly just a money grab. And like part of me in saying that also understands that like for the amount of like this sucks, but like do we have this Apple TV deal that's honestly kind of transformed the league in a lot of ways in terms of coverage and eyeballs and just the hype around the league with it's like a good and the bad, right? Because I think this is partially because Apple TV has such a now like a handle on the league, which I think a lot of us would say is a positive. It sounds like the subscription numbers were pretty good.
Yeah.
A lot of people watched MLS Cup. I think there was a lot who watched it on Apple TV that didn't get like added into those numbers. But I think for me, like this is brutal. Like you said, the oldest competition in U.S. soccer. I have incredible memory of I mean, this launched a lot of MLS teams into where they are now. FC Cincinnati versus Chicago Fire, I will never forget. And that would never happen. I mean, for a bad reason, but also, like, I look back on that as, like, a good memory because even though the Fire lost, that was awesome. Like, the way that went down, Mitch Hildebrandt, just absolute incredible performance in goal.
Yes.
Just watching that happen and seeing FC Cincinnati, their fan base going crazy, watching them beat an MLS team is awesome. I mean, that's where it's at, like seeing those smaller clubs in the United States, just wherever they may be, just competing and playing their heart out against MLS teams is so cool to watch. And it's so cool when they succeed, and it gives them, it builds the entire infrastructure of U.S. soccer. And so that's why it's like, I would like to see like U.S. soccer as a whole come at this at another level and just be like, it's good for the sport in general to have the U.S. Open Cup. It's good to mix these teams, have these competitions, have, the Fire go to Cincinnati and play at I think it was a college stadium when that happened. And would Cincinnati be where they are today? Maybe, if that never happened. But I think that was massive for them to build more fans, more, people knowing who they are. That was amazing. And I think, like, when a team like that shows out, it puts that little hint in, like, Don Garber's mind, like, oh, expansion side, that game was incredible. They had a ton of fans, and they were a USL side at the time.
Yeah. I mean, even to me, looking at it past an MLS point of view, like Sacramento, 2 years ago when they made the final, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's an incredible story that also has launched.
I want to see Louisville City up against MLS teams. I want to see what they can do.
100%, right? Like, I think it's launched also so many careers. Like, how many players have, been signed off of amateur clubs that maybe had one upset in the U.S. Open Cup, and then they got to sign to a USL team or an MLS academy or an MLS.
Or they had like that one amazing game at the biggest moment of their careers,
exactly.
And then launched them into this long career as a substitute or a starter, even like.
And look, Major League Soccer doesn't need to care about. They should, in my opinion, of it. I'm just saying they don't need to care about U.S. soccer and the growth of U.S. soccer, right? They don't need to. At the end of the day, again, I think they should, but they can strictly focus on MLS and MLS Next Pro, and if that's all they want to care about, then they're allowed to do that.
I don't know though. Like, I think yes, but also with USL continuing to grow and continuing to build their infrastructure, there's going to come a point where, like, and I think this could be forever from now. Like, I don't know, but I think USL is starting to put itself into a position where it's like, this is it already is a good league. Their infrastructure is very interesting on what it seems like they're planning on doing.
Yes.
And when that all changes, it could put MLS in a weird spot. And then they are going to be in the U.S. Open Cup.
That's
they
all
are going to have eyes when we're watching the U.S. Open Cup, and we're like, obviously, people who are going to go watch that. There's a lot of people who probably won't, but or probably don't. But I don't know. I think you're right. Like, they don't have to care about U.S. soccer, but I think caring about U.S. soccer also helps their league in terms of growth.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. Is they 100% should care. They 100% should care about the growth of players in this country.
It's like a very closed-minded approach on something 100%. That they could very well benefit off of if they just wanted to.
And that's the point that I was getting to, is I think MLS is choosing at this point to be a very inclusive league, and they're not choosing to be exclusive. If you don't fall within the terms or the rights of Major League Soccer or MLS Next Pro, they don't give a shit, and they have every right to operate that way. I don't think it's the best for soccer in this country. Because of the opportunities that aren't being given to players, clubs, whatever it may be. The other aspect that I'm annoyed at within this is U.S. soccer, right? Like, remove Major League Soccer, talk about just U.S. soccer right now, in the sense of U.S. soccer allowing this is to me is absolutely wrong. To me,
Right.
this should be a gigantic fight between U.S. Soccer and Major League Soccer that this has come to a decision. I know Sebastian Salazar of ESPN FC, or I guess just of ESPN, he said that U.S. Soccer should really think about removing the Division I status from Major League Soccer. And at first I was like, yeah, like, haha, like whatever. But like, you honestly think about it, like he has a legitimate point. I'm sorry, but if you're choosing
That
not
would
to,
just destroy the league in some ways, but
100%, and it would never happen. But I'm saying, like, if you are choosing not to compete in a competition that should be run by U.S. Soccer, and you want to be part of U.S. Soccer, then U.S. Soccer should step in and say, no,
well,
nope.
yeah. I mean, if you want to be recognized by U.S. Soccer, you should be in a U.S. Soccer competition.
The
You
only
can't
U.S.
just be like,
Soccer,
no, I don't want to do it. Like,
yeah, it's the only U.S. Soccer competition though, because Leagues Cup is MLS. Campeones Cup is MLS. MLS playoffs is MLS. Like, right? Like, this is the literally singular only competition that U.S. Soccer
also,
runs.
like, I thought another really interesting point is just like they're giving up a Champions League spot by doing
That was, oh my God. So I
which
was
is
thinking,
like, what? Like, are you that's just stupid. Like, what are you doing? I mean, good for USL, and the lower leagues now have that. I mean, I guess at that point it's kind of exciting if you have, I don't know, Sacramento or Phoenix in the Champions League. But it's like, why would MLS just give up that route to the Champions League when that brings in a ton of money?
And I will say this, if CONCACAF changes its rule around the Open Cup getting a CCL spot, I'm going to be livid. I'm going to be even more.
Well, yeah. I mean, if they change that, it would be that. Yeah, that would be a major slap in the face to the whole thing.
The final point that I was thinking of about this all day when thinking about recording this episode was just how much of a failure U.S. Soccer has been for the U.S. Open Cup. Like, obviously, right, like if the U.S. Open Cup reward money was just as much as Leagues Cup, I don't think MLS is backing out of it or even has a thought of doing that. And again, it's not right on MLS's behalf or anything like that, but U.S. Soccer should make the U.S. Open Cup this special competition that has the prize money, that has lower division teams having MLS clubs and USL championship clubs coming to their cities and their stadiums, and it should be what the FA Cup is in England. It should be the Copa del Rey. It should be the DFB Pokal. It should be, whatever type of cup competition you want to think of. There is so much opportunity to show how special soccer is in this country, and U.S. Soccer is an absolute fucking failure for allowing this to happen and allowing the U.S. Open Cup to, I think get like disgraced pretty much by this, if you ask me.
I mean, it's a good example with the FA Cup. Like, there are teams who are in the 5th, 6th, 7th divisions who end up playing a Tottenham, a Liverpool, a Manchester United, and they get, a lot of times, I think it's actually normally 100% of the ticket revenue in a lot of those games in the stadiums. And like that one game is huge for a lot of those clubs.
It's paying salaries for players for years.
Absolute massive, like club changing moments. Yeah. And it's like, I think 2 years ago, there was like a 7th tier team that played Tottenham. Yeah. And it was just incredible. It's, sure, like they might get destroyed or whatever, but that's not the point of those moments. Yeah, like their fans get to go to, I don't know, they don't call it White Hart Lane anymore. It's London Stadium or whatever, and see a game and watch their team of local people compete against Spurs. Like, it's just incredible, and I think you're losing some of that magic that like you can get in a U.S. Open Cup that you can't get in a very closed MLS view
system. And I think that speaks more to the point of Major League Soccer is allowed to operate however the fuck they want to operate. I disagree with this decision. I disagree with them doing this. But this is, to me, more of a failure on U.S. Soccer for allowing Major League Soccer to bully them, and for U.S. Soccer to fail the U.S. Open Cup competition in general, in my opinion. And, whatever. I know pundits and people who work for Major League Soccer have been shockingly quiet about this on social media. And I love Extra Time. I love the boys over on Extra Time, but it was an absolute embarrassment that they didn't talk about this. They brought it up and then just didn't say shit. I have respect for all those guys still, and I understand that they're getting paid by MLS and they probably can't say much, but the fact that, you know, you have all these people who don't work for Apple TV or don't work for MLS or whatever, or US Soccer, like all the people working over at CBS Sports, they're speaking up at how embarrassing this is. Just shouts to them. It's not going to change.
I haven't heard a single positive opinion on this.
There's plenty of people who are happy because they just don't see the US Open Cup as important. Fine, you're allowed to have your opinion. I think it's dumb, but you're allowed to have your opinion. You know,
like, I think it sucks.
Hey, it's fair. I can respect someone and not agree with them. You know what I'm saying? Like, I can say, like, I don't agree with your opinion, but I respect that you have the different opinion than me. But it's just, I don't know. It's wild. I really hope a USL club, a NISA club, an independent club that is all amateur players wins the fucking Open Cup next year in some final over like Red Bulls 2 or some shit, and is just I hope that's all I want. That's all
I just want them to get a Champions League spot.
Yeah, I guess we'll see what comes with that. I haven't seen. It's a very good point. I've thought about it. I haven't seen anyone talking about that, but you know, maybe I can do some digging and see if we can pull some information out about that. Is there anything else you want to say about us? I mean, I think I'm very visibly annoyed, but us being annoyed.
Yeah, I mean, it's annoying. It sucks. I think we both are very, like, obviously it sucks. A lot of the people I've talked to that are just fans of MLS and soccer in general in this country, or that are just my friends, are pretty like, what's your opinion on this? Or like, why, like, this is pretty dumb. Like, I don't know. I feel like it's just stupid. Like, it's just dumb. It's such a, it's not worth having it, because it's just like, it bothers me because it's like, why?
Yeah.
They could have easily not done this and no one would have said anything, you know, like it would have been fine to just keep competing. You could have put in all your reserves. You could have put in your MLS Next Pro team, and I wouldn't have said anything. But them just refusing to compete is bullshit.
It's look, you, like you said, you could have just loaned up your MLS Next Pro side to your MLS side.
You were like, we've got a midweek game, you know.
Yeah. There was years ago where Bruce Arena didn't even travel to a U.S. Open Cup game, and he just
there
trusted
are teams in MLS who aren't even putting good teams out on MLS game days. Okay, so like, I mean, a lot of them, man. I've seen it.
All right, let's move on and let's just finish up. We'll wrap up the episode soon, but like I said to start the episode, the off season's here. There's been a lot of moves. We're not going to talk about all these moves that I have listed out on our notes, Jason. So don't you worry. But
moves.
Is there a move that stands out to you right now that initially, you know, kind of is kicking off the off season that you're like, good move, bad move, question mark, just stands out to you?
I think, I mean, at least we had somewhat texted about it, so it might have been worth talking about, is the Chris Durkin to St. Louis City for Jared Stroud and Lucas Bartlett and
$300,000.
Yeah. I think personally that's quite a bit, and I know we've a little bit chatted with this, but we haven't really done it on the podcast. But Chris Durkin's good. I like Jared Stroud. Lucas Bartlett is, I think, more of a depth piece. I think Stroud is sort of like a fringe starter at times. And then they added $300K. So, like, it doesn't really make sense to me. I don't know. Can you explain to me how Chris Durkin is worth, like, a semi-starter and a great depth piece and $300,000?
I think so. I'm a big Chris Durkin fan, friend of the pod. I'm just gonna throw that one out there too. So I might be a little biased.
I mean, this is nothing against Chris Durkin.
But I'm just gonna say this.
It's a lot.
I think it is a lot, but I think for he's only 23, which also still blows my mind that he's not even like technically in the prime of his career yet. At 23 years old, he almost has 200 games played, and he's already made that move to Belgium. Like, he's already played in the Belgium top division. He's already impressed there. Now in his return to Major League Soccer, like, he's no longer considered a six. He's now like he's now more of like a central midfielder that can also play a little fullback too. He's reminding me a little bit more of like Matt Polster since his return, but again, at a much, much younger age. I think the long-term having Chris Durkin on your roster is almost worth it in this sense. I think that is a lot to give up for St. Louis, but St. Louis has the depth right now at center back. They have the depth right now in the midfield. The extra GAM is a little bit of the head scratcher for me. I think it's
that's my thing. Like, if this was just Chris Durkin for Stroud and Bartlett, I'd be like, wow, that's a great move.
fine. Yeah.
The extra 300K is a lot. I mean, you see that with like a decent amount.
Yeah, of moves around.
Yeah.
I think to me it's like, right, like St. Louis, they gave up some center back depth that they had, and they swapped a starter in central midfield, and I think upgraded in starter in central midfield. DC, they kind of just added some really good, I think, just quality to the roster for whoever comes in as their manager. They got Jared Stroud, who, like you said, it could be a spot starter, could be a bench, a first guy off the bench type piece or whatever. And I think Lucas Bartlett in his short career has proven he can be I think he can be like a Sebastian Ibiaga type, right? Like a third center back on a roster. So I think this is, for the most part, a win-win on both sides, I would say. But I can understand the head scratch a little bit.
St. Louis gets a great player, but we're talking about, like, St. Louis was first in their conference. I don't know where I'm going to put them next year, but they obviously have aspirations to, get pretty far.
Yeah, they're in Champions Cup
competitions. And they improved their starting lineup, but then they sacrificed depth, which is super important, especially on teams that want to be at the top.
Yeah, I think it's 100% fair. I would argue that they have the center back depth to stay up top. I think the midfield depth is where it gets called into question. But look, it's the start of the offseason. If I'm a St. Louis fan, I'm also thinking we're making more moves as it comes down the line, right? I'm going to go with Josh Cohen to Atlanta United. The Josh Cohen story is just a great story. After leaving the USL Championship, he went to the Israel top division. He got to play in the Champions League for Maccabi Haifa. He was named the Israeli Football Player of the Year. He won 3 Israeli Premier League championships. Like, he was at one point the best soccer player in Israel, and he's 31 years old. He's coming back to the States, and he's getting his first MLS shot here. And to me, it almost seems like this is a goodbye to Brad Guzan and in Atlanta United, and this is going to be Josh Cohen's team moving forward. So, look, I think it's an upgrade. I think Brad Guzan, at his age right now and his injury concerns from the last 2 seasons, would very much make this move understandable. And I'm interested to see what Josh Cohen can do in Major League Soccer. I like the move. I'm a fan of him and the player and all of it. So I like it. Anything you want to say about Josh Cohen?
Yeah, I mean, Atlanta operates pretty well, so I don't have much to say, but I think it's a good move.
All right. Any other move that stands out to you that you want to mention before we sign
Emil Forsberg to Red Bull on a designated player deal. I think that's a pretty massive move for them. Obviously, with the new manager signing that we talked about, Sandro Schwarz, like, you bring in Forsberg alongside that. That's pretty big. I mean, that's like to start off the offseason. Like, they're winning. Like, winning right now, like, arguably. So I'm curious to see where they continue to go from here, but it doesn't seem like they're ready to just, run it back. I think they want to make some changes and improve even more. And obviously, they were that fringe playoff team that made a little noise, but not enough. And, like, Forsberg is an awesome player. Like, they're getting a great player to go along with a decent team, right? And they're going to be tough next year.
I think it's also they're getting a great player that knows the Red Bull system, right? He's obviously coming from Red Bull Leipzig, so he knows how Red Bull likes to play. To me, it's going to be interesting because I think between him, Luquinhas, and Lewis Morgan, when Lewis Morgan returns next year, you almost have three guys who all kind of play a similar role, all at a pretty high salary too. So I would be interested to see if one of them, or I mean, maybe even two of them moves. I could see or understand moving Lewis Morgan because of his injury concerns. I can understand, moving Luquinhas because of, just his lack of being good at soccer concerns. And, that there seems to be just a little bit too much in the same spots for the Red Bulls. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see a move there.
I mean, I think that's a good point, but like too many creative players is not really necessarily a bad thing. I think Emil Forsberg in attacking midfield position, like that's one of the most important spots in MLS. You've seen like the 10s basically run the league in some ways. And so this is like their shot at that, I guess.
No, for sure. I'm not saying it's a bad thing to have too much talent. I'm just saying I think there's also major holes on this team still that money and salary space could probably go to better used. Center back, better spots across the back line. Probably if Dante, you have to see if you're putting your faith that Dante Van Seer is your DP9. You have to see, how that's also going to work out next year too. So look, there's a lot of question marks, at least for me, still with the Red Bulls, even though I do think they're getting better. I'm just going to run through some of these. Interrupt me if you feel like you have something you want to say about it. Antonio Carlos, Orlando City sold the 30-year-old center back to Fluminense in Brazil. We got Wilder Cartagena. Orlando City locked down the full signing of him after him being on loan in the 2023 season. So able to bring the Peruvian international veteran back, and he was a great piece for them last year, I thought. The left back swap between Chicago and Colorado. Andrew Gutman goes back home goes home just in general to Chicago, while Miguel Navarro heads over to Colorado, and Colorado also is receiving $450,000 in general allocation money for that deal. And then the right back swap between DC and Montreal. Aaron Herrera leaves Montreal to go to DC. Juan leaves DC to head up to Montreal, and Montreal also receives $500,000 in general allocation money on that deal as well. And then the last major move I just want to mention is Raheem Edwards. He gets traded from the Galaxy to CF Montreal for $400,000 in general allocation money. So Montreal is getting their wing back upgrades for the 2024 season with those two moves there. Any other move that you feel like we should mention before signing off?
There's some interesting like crew re-signing players, but I don't know if it's worth really. That one is a good one to mention too.
Yeah, Steven Moreira, Rudy Camacho, they're back. Good moves to bring them back.
Kubo back at Cincinnati, I think, is a big move.
Yeah, 100%. He's played himself into being, I think, a really good bench piece for Cincinnati. Nick Lima, he's going to New England because Brandon Bai is probably still going to miss some time after the long-term injury last year. So I think that's a solid depth piece there. There's probably honestly it if we're going to talk about like big names in this thing. Also, Griffin Dorsey. Shout out to Houston Love. He re-signed. So that'll be it. That's where I'm going to end it there. Shout out Houston. Shout out Griffin Dorsey. U.S. Soccer, you suck. And that's all I got to say this episode. Jason, anything you want to finish this off with?
Yeah, it's kind of a downer a little bit, but I don't know. Like the games are no longer happening. They're just like I like talking about actual soccer. Yes. So that's a bummer, but we're going to keep going. We're going to have fun. So.
No, look,
Happy holidays to people.
that's probably the right way to end it, Jason, is happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, because I don't think, are we going to record again before the new year?
I can't.
Yeah, next week is going to be tough. Happy New Year. Happy New Year. We'll see you all in 2024. I just made the executive decision there, probably. If there's an episode next week, then there's an episode. If not, see y'all the first week of 2024. But yeah, the off season is going to go on. We're going to try to make these off season episodes a little bit more fun. We'll see how that goes. But for Jason, for myself, see you later.
Peace.